Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent, and I have some questions for you, our listener. Who wrote the Federalist Papers? What power does the president have? Name one right only U.S. citizens possess. Those are real questions from the U.S. Citizenship Civics Test. The test now draws from 128 possible questions. It asks up to 20 on the spot. You must answer at least 12 correctly to pass. Now, let's be real. Many native-born Americans would struggle with questions like these. Now, at the same time, immigration enforcement in the United States has intensified. Federal authorities have dramatically expanded arrests, detention, and deportation efforts, including actions involving people with no criminal records beyond alleged immigration violations. New enforcement policies and court challenges have pushed questions of belonging, due process, and legal status back into daily life. Citizenship isn't just something written on a test. It's a lived experience, felt in neighborhoods, in courtrooms, and in the center of our political conversation. So to help us step back and make sense of this moment, I'm joined by Mark Krugman. He's a retired professor of history at Wayne State University and the founding director of its Center for the Study of Citizenship. Mark, welcome.
Thank you, Robin. It's nice to be here.
So before we talk about decline or crisis, I think it helps to be clear about terms. So when you study citizenship, what are you actually studying?
Well, the standard definition usually is a response to the question of what is the relationship of the individual to the state. But in studying citizenship, the vision is much broader. I actually like to draw on the very simple Merriam-Webster dictionary definition, which is membership in a community.
Membership in a community. So that really tells us that it's so much more beyond legal status. Can you talk about that for a moment in the American context, what citizenship then actually includes?
Well, I think that if you consider community in different ways, geographically, it might be your neighbors, a block that has influence, the local government, state government, and how we all belong. Any kind of public institution that people are members of. And we tend to use the term citizenship and citizen pretty broadly in everyday discourse. Yeah. And so folks at the university, a person who is committed to the university is seen as a good academic citizen.
Okay. So then with this in mind, what does healthy citizenship look like on the ground?
Healthy citizenship looks like knowledgeable about what is going on in the particular community, an understanding of the issues that are being faced, whether it's local government or student council.
And is that because healthy citizenship means engagement?
Healthy citizenship does indeed mean engagement. And that's why I suggested that the foundation is understanding, because engagement without knowledge is at risk of being very counterproductive.
Certainly, certainly. Well, with all of that in mind, it becomes easier then to ask whether something is shifting here in America. From your perspective, does citizenship feel weaker now than it did, let's say, a generation ago?
There has been a decline in trust in government, especially the further away from home you get, the greater the distrust. So the greatest distrust is in the federal government. There are studies of trust over the last almost century. You can go back to the 1950s, and trust in government hit as high as 3/4 of the population.
That sounds unimaginable today.
Yes, indeed, where 30% is high indeed, and you often see polls that sit in the high teens, which is dreadful.
It's abysmal indeed. Yeah. So we're seeing these declines in trust in government and declines of trust in one another. I mean, we've seen uneven civic participation and gaps in civic knowledge. So when you put those trends together, what story do they tell about citizenship today?
I think that the idea of citizenship is both more challenged than it has been in the past, but at the same time is reflecting a distrust of not only government but institutions more generally. And in that sense, the big issue is, how do we educate people in a way to get them to embrace that kind of engagement? So I'd say that first. But the other is, there's still lots of evidence of more informal acts of citizenship that are not so much about government, but about helping others because they see themselves as members of a community.
And so you would say that that feeling is on the decline.
I don't know that the willingness to help others is in decline.
Oh, good. I'm really happy to hear that, Mark.
I would. That's the aspect of citizenship that pushes back against the trends that we were just talking about in terms of trust.
And when we think about that rising distrust in institutions, we know that that has been central to President Trump's rhetoric. And for someone who studies citizenship and its importance, how significant would you say it is that Trump has made this central to his a central page in his playbook, I should say, the idea of not trusting any institutions?
Oh, I think it's profound. So in early 2025, you would expect faith in government, trust in government to vary according to partisan affiliation. Democrats trust Democratic presidents, Republicans trust Republican presidents, and they don't trust the opposition.
Sure.
But there remains an unease, certainly among youth, among young Republicans, and their trust.
Let's talk about that if we could, the ways that younger people are experiencing citizenship versus older generations.
It appears that Gen Z, 1997 to 2012, that there is a sense that government is disconnected from them and not truthful, that it engages in self-dealing. And when Gen Z was or did a poll of Gen Z by nonprofit, nonpartisan organizations, the thing that they focused primarily on was corruption.
This is young people.
Young people. And I think that there's that sense that people in government engage in self-dealing, which also has to be factored into the way in which we understand the Trump presidency.
I mean, how different is this from, let's say, the 1960s when young people felt great despair and distrust in their government? We're talking about the Vietnam War and people constantly marching in the streets against that. We're talking about the civil rights movement. And again, folks marching in the street against their government. Is this time when we think about how young people experience citizenship, is it that different from then?
Oh, I think very different, actually, because then I don't want to do this as reminiscence of my participation, but in fact, what you point to marching in the street.
Yeah.
You don't see anyone marching in the street except some challenges to the Trump administration. There have been some protests, but among youth, there's nothing really that stands out. For those people who are marching in the street, yes, they denounce government, but there's also underlying that and the civil rights movement is a certain amount of optimism about the future and the potential for government to act on behalf of a perceived common good.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that it's hard to compare the protest movements of the 1960s and 70s with what's happening right now, because right now they're more reactionary. I mean, we saw in reaction to the murder of George Floyd during a time when everything was shut down, we saw a massive response. And
absolutely,
we have been seeing responses to the Trump administration more broadly, just Trump governing. We're seeing a response to that with protests. We're seeing a response to the killing of Renee Good by a federal immigration officer in Minneapolis. But you're saying it has to be really sustained.
I think that what we've seen have been fairly short-lived, and there's been a triumph of reaction against them.
How important is protesting and civil disobedience to the experience of citizenship?
I don't think it's essential if you've embraced and view with great trust government. It also opens up, it's not essential if you want to run for government and change things. A lot of protest depends on setting and history. And certainly the murder of George Floyd seemed to be triggering a new civil rights movement at the moment. And as you point out, it was not sustained.
It was not sustained, but it did do something that you have identified as central to citizenship, and that is caring about one another. No?
I think absolutely. And even in the protests in Minneapolis, certainly many of the nonviolent protesters see themselves as caring, and they use that language of caring for members of their community, and which in itself speaks to what we were talking about at the very beginning. Who's a citizen? And for if you know someone, just because they're undocumented, but they've participated in the neighborhood, have supported neighborhood activities, that person's, you can't imagine that person being expelled from the country or expelled from the community because they're not only located in the community, but have kind of woven themselves into the fabric of the community.
I'm glad you're bringing that up. And after a short break, we're going to talk a little bit more about immigrants and citizenship and what this all means for citizenship in the long term. It's the Metro on WDET. My guest is Mark Krumman. He's founding director of the Center for the Study of Citizenship at Wayne State University. We're discussing what it means to be a citizen right now. We'll continue the conversation in just a moment. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent, and I'm joined by Mark Krumman. He's founding director of the Center for the Study of Citizenship at Wayne State University, and we're discussing what it means to be a citizen right now during a tumultuous time in America, especially with heightened immigration enforcement. And that's what I want to talk about now, Mark, if we could, because we're seeing changes in who is even positioned to become a citizen. Reports from 2025 indicate a sharp downturn in the U.S. immigrant population, with more people leaving the country than arriving for the first time in decades. Between January and June of last year alone, the foreign-born population shrank by more than 1 million people. Now, that was driven by deportations, by voluntary departures, and policy shifts. I'm wondering, what does that reversal mean for citizenship in the long term?
I think clearly there is a policy of the federal government to restrict immigration in the extreme. And you do see people leaving because they don't want to be in a country where they're not welcome, where opportunities are fewer. It's a more restrictive vision of citizenship than we've seen really since the regime of the 1920s and going on into the 1950s.
I want to stay on that point for a minute, because you're saying that we have not seen this view of what it means to belong in America since Well, you said the 1920s to the 1950s, up until then.
Then the policies of the federal government changed. But this represents a wave of nativism. Mm-hmm. Over the course of the United States, there have been several moments where the percentage of foreign-born people has risen to as high as 15% of the total population. That historically has triggered major nativist movements, whether it was against the Irish in the 1850s, against immigrants at the turn of the century, right before quotas were introduced in 1921-24, and this represents the third wave, where again the foreign-born population for a moment tipped over 15%, and nativism has enjoyed a resurgence in the United States. Not like it went away completely, but it certainly has increased. The consequences of this are ultimately dire. It means the United States will be an aging country. Citizens will be older if this policy is sustained.
I mean, it's not only that. I had University of Michigan Dearborn's interim chancellor on yesterday, and she was talking about the decrease in international students and how the U.S. is now experiencing a potentially diminished role in its ability to compete on the world stage when we think about certain industries, because international students are not coming here.
They're not welcome.
Yeah.
And it had been at the heart of especially graduate enrollments at Wayne State in the sciences. And we know that we had, in the past, we being the United States, had attracted scientists from all over, students who wanted to study here and live and contribute to the environment. The president has now monetized some of these visas, where minimum payment of $100,000 will get you a work visa. But it in the end, it's counterproductive for the country. And it's just like in Minneapolis right now. What we see is violence and conflict, but only a small handful of people, 3,000 people, have been arrested, and on a larger stage, only about 47% of people who were arrested had any kind of criminal background.
You're talking about undocumented folks
who've been
arrested.
Expelled. Well, expelled.
Meaning you're saying that this hasn't been a substantial operation, as much as the Trump administration would like to paint it as a very large and important operation to remove so-called criminals from the country. You're pushing back on that.
I am.
Okay. I want to zoom in on Detroit, because we only have a few minutes left. And Detroit, when we think about citizenship, is a case study of sorts. It's been shaped by migration, by labor movements, and long struggles over belonging. I'm wondering, what does Detroit's history reveal about how citizenship is lived?
Well, I think it's a very good question. It reflects both the long past, but also the last 60 years or so in the city, a long and difficult slide into from the key city in the country to a pitied city in the country. But in all of this, government played little role except to earn the distrust of Detroit citizens. And the disengagement of Detroiters with government reflects a profound lack of trust and also a sense that their voices were not heard. And this has been a crisis embodied to some extent in the minuscule turnout of Detroiters to vote for mayor.
It's a very small turnout. It has chronically been that. Yes. And you directly connect that abysmal turnout to a distrust in government after many years of disinvestment and government corruption that Detroiters have experienced.
Exactly. But there's one more issue here. The election for mayor was in 2025. What other elections can you think about going on in 2025 for all of your listeners? There are almost none, and that was purposeful. In the late 19th century, early 20th century, in the progressive movement, in their desire to clean up politics, they scheduled elections at the time that would attract the least attention. In some ways, 22% turning out fulfilled the wishes of the people who created it.
Oh, gosh, I realize you've been doing a lot of work in Detroit to increase citizenship, and we only have about 30 seconds left, and that's not enough time, I don't think, to get into that work. But you have been helping different communities in Detroit to claim full membership. Is that right?
That is true, especially about public health right now. And it has been empowering in a number of neighborhoods in the city, which in itself is now connecting them more fully to a broader civic engagement.
So, in other words, taking control of your health and being engaged in that way, that's a part of citizenship too.
Absolutely. You're making public decisions for your community.
Well, thank you for that work and for talking to us today. Mark Krugman is the founding director of the Center for the Study of Citizenship at Wayne State University. Thanks so much, Mark.
You're very welcome.
This is WDTFM, Detroit Public Radio, your connection to news, music, and connection. People.